Welcome to the Millstone Report, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. My name is Paul Harrell, and really appreciate you guys being with us. 274. 274. That is the number that we know of for now, recently reported, detailing that there were 700 or 274 plain-clothed FBI agents in the crowd on January 6th, 2021. This is just yet another confirmation of what we already know, or at least what I already know. I've come to the conclusion a long time ago that January 6th was entrapment at the least and a giant false flag at the worst, in an attempt to squash populism and keep President Donald Trump from ever running for office again. We're going to talk about that. Also, we're going to discuss how last week, the blows kind of kept coming with the tragic announcement, the death of evangelist, pastor, minister Vodi Bakum. We're going to talk about that. We're going to play some of his most viral clips on the internet because he preached the gospel and he was a man of the book. And I look for his sermons to become even more popular in his death than they were in his life as things age. Continue to pray for so many people who they're taking this extremely hard, obviously. Also pray for his family, obviously. Also, we want to talk about James Comey finally indicted. We've been talking about where are the indictments, where are the arrests over and over and over again on this program since Donald Trump was sworn into office. And so finally we at least have one arrest. Will it lead to more? Will people in Comey's inner circle flip on him, turn on him, and testify against him? I don't know. I do know that getting a conviction in the Eastern District of Virginia is going to be very, very difficult. Not a lot of Republicans around there. We're going to talk about that, all of that, much, much more as well here on the Millstone Report. Happy Monday to you. All right, so here we go. You know, what's funny about all of this is when you go back, it's always fun to go back and point out the hypocrisy of people on the left, like James Comey himself when he was on a news station or on a TV show back on January 21st of 2021. This would have been obviously after J6. This would have been the day after Joe Biden was inaugurated, right? Inaugurated. Remember the inauguration? Do you guys remember the Joe Biden inauguration and how absolutely strange it was because of, COVID? Remember all that? And that led to a whole nother tranche of conspiracy theories. Anyway, it was a very odd inauguration. It was more like an installation. But the day after Joe Biden was sworn in as president, James Comey was calling for Trump to be thrown in prison. And I feel like that is where we're going to start today. I want you to go back and listen to this. And then we're going to listen to what he said after he was indicted.
Convict him, bar him from future service, have the local prosecutors in New York pursue him for the fraudster that he was before he ever became president, lock him up for the garden variety frauds he did there, but don't give him that center stage, that dominant role in our national life, just down the street where Joe Biden is trying to heal this nation. Convict him, bar him from future service, have the local prosecutors in New York pursue him.
So, obviously, the local prosecutors in New York did do that. He was very enthusiastic. He was almost panicked in a way about the whole situation, in a way. I mean, very passionate about barring him from running for office again and putting him in jail. James Comey, very, very passionate for a guy that, for so long considered himself to be a Boy Scout, considered himself to be apolitical, or at least that's what he says. Like, that's what he puts out, that he's apolitical, or he ran a Department of Justice that wasn't political. What you have to say about the upper echelons of the FBI, that they are part of the intel oligarch, that the American people don't trust them and they think that they are political hacks. But I think we're also finding out that, a lot of times the defense of keeping the FBI around was, well, the rank and file are good, and there are some that are good. Don't misunderstand me. That don't agree with this, that believe that justice should, in fact, be blind. However, I do think we have to talk about the sheer amount of FBI agents that have been recruited over the last 10 years where there hasn't been a threat to the uniparty. There's really no threat to the intel oligarchy, this giant police state that we have built, that our taxpayers have built, that now has the ability to enslave the people without us even knowing it, or has the ability to run color revolutions against us for 10 years because we put Donald Trump in office and people didn't like it. Whatever the case may be, I think you have to consider that for decades, the FBI's recruiting a type of person, a rank and file type of person that I think there's a lot of communists in the FBI. That's just my opinion. I think we've got a lot of communists in our government. I think to this day, I think it's very curious that the United States Secret Service worked with the Department of Homeland Security, worked with the NYPD to bust that giant server operation that was in New York. That, this was last week we were covering this, and the FBI was not involved. I find that still to this day very interesting that the FBI was not involved in that operation, and I just think that it's possible that people in the Department of Homeland Security don't trust the FBI or the people in the Secret Service, who, by the way, that's underneath in the tree of things, in the hierarchy of things. The Secret Service is underneath the Department of Homeland Security. But anyway, so that's James Comey's attack against President Trump. We've said this for a long time on this program. J6 was a Fedsurrection. And if it was a real insurrection, it was the most unsuccessful insurrection ever. People didn't even show up and bring firearms. I think one guy actually did, and he was on camera shooting a gun from a rafter outside, one of those scaffolding from outside. And but he wasn't arrested for like 4 years later when the footage leaked. So what was that guy doing? Who was that guy? Obviously, who is Ray Epps? Well, we know who Ray Epps was. Okay, Ray Epps was obviously working with the feds. Okay, he was obviously in there working with the feds, and all those videos of him smiling after everything really got kicked up because he knew he had done his job. Now we find out 247 agents, 274 agents, plainclothes FBI agents were in the crowd. And we'll get to Kash Patel's qualification. But, Comey is a part of all of this. Even though he was let go, even though, it was Christopher Wray, FBI, Comey is part of this entire overarching conspiracy theory that really started with accepting Hillary Clinton's lie that because she was vulnerable with her email server, they needed to find a way to say that Russia hacked the DNC, Russia hacked her emails, and it was Donald Trump working with Russia, and Russia was working for Donald Trump, and that was the lie they bought, and everything since then has been a cover-up and a way to try to take out Trump. Here is James Comey after he was indicted.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump, but we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way.
This guy is a total narcissist and a sociopath and a compulsive liar. I have gone back, knowing what we know now, gone back and watched his interview with George Snuffleupagus or watched some of these interviews. This guy literally lies. He lies all the time. I think he even believes his own lies. I think that's a possibility because he really does it so well. It's either that or he needs an Academy Award because he really tries to put on this Boy Scout. The guy, I think he's just a total nutcase, like totally psycho, and again, a sociopath. What about the cost of Donald Trump standing up to you, Jim? What about that? My family's always known the cost of standing up to Donald Trump. What was the price that Donald Trump paid by standing up to you and firing you? Oh, yeah, the Mueller investigation. Yeah. Oh yeah, him going through exactly what you told local prosecutors to do in Georgia, in New York, Jack Smith, Mar-a-Lago raid. Like, he acts like Donald Trump, and this is what they're going to do. And this is what's so frustrating. And there's really no way. I mean, we just have to brace ourselves for it. They are going to completely ignore that Donald Trump was indicted. What was it? 3, 4, 5 times. They're going to completely ignore that Donald Trump was arrested, the famous mugshot. They're going to ignore Jack Smith. They're going to ignore the Mar-a-Lago raid. And now they're going to take this phrase, weaponized justice, or the weaponization of the judicial system, and that's the only thing that Democrats are going to say from here on out, if these indictments continue, which they better, if Pam Bondi wants to stick around.
We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either. Somebody that I love dearly recently said that fear is the tool of a tyrant, and she's right. But I'm not afraid, and I hope you're not either. I hope instead you are engaged, you are paying attention, and you will vote like your beloved country depends upon it.
Like my life depends on it is what he really means. Yeah, be engaged like Jim Comey. Go look for shells on the beach that spell 8647, and then try to convince the country that as a former director of the FBI, you didn't know what the phrase 86 meant. Try that. 8647.
Which it does. My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial and keep the faith.
There you go. So he maintains his innocence. A call to action for people to get engaged and presumably vote to give the House and the Senate control to the Democrats next year in 2026. Here is some fallout. George Papadopoulos, who obviously he was framed along with Donald Trump and Michael Flynn for essentially treason, says Comey's inner circle will be forced to testify against him. Foreign governments and intel agencies have already provided evidence against him. He says it's not a matter of if he will lose his case and likely subsequent cases, but when. The most important question moving forward now is, will Comey flip? If he values his freedom, that would be a wise move. Now, that is very interesting, coming from somebody who would know, who's been harassed by the government, George Papadopoulos. But then we have, Comey's Comey's fellow, I think, co-conspirators, people like Andrew McCabe, making the rounds, expressing the outrage that James Comey was indicted.
I mean, there's only one thing to make of it, Jake. It is absolutely what the president himself characterized it as. It's vengeance. This is the revenge tour. It's the tour he promised when he ran for office in 2024. It's what most of us who have fallen in his crosshairs before expected, and it's what we're seeing now. And I absolutely expect we'll see more people fall into the same sort of vindictive prosecutorial defense posture. And
so it's not justice. They're saying this is vengeance. Vengeance. I mean, at this point, I don't really care if it is vengeance after what we all had to go through ourselves on the right? I mean, there's got to be some level of that, and I think that's just like it's unavoidable and natural that, hey, you did this to me, and so I'm going to now put you through this. The difference, obviously, could be that Donald Trump did not do the things they said he did and was innocent, versus the people who did the very crimes they claim Donald Trump did, but did them for real, as a means of cover-up, as a means to stop Orange Man at all costs. Seems like they were very vulnerable, were very afraid, very fearful of what a Donald Trump presidency meant, and that's why his first term was essentially sabotaged from the get-go. Then we get to J.D. Vance.
So I want to start with this. President Trump has said that the indictment of James Comey is justice, not revenge. There is pushback to that, of course, among Democrats, including Senator Tim Kaine, who is calling it a complete political hatchet job. The president has said, quote, there will be others. And in the past, he has listed Adam Schiff and Letitia James. Do you think there are more indictments coming, and do you think that's justified?
Well, there's certainly going to be more indictments coming over the next 3.5 years of the Trump administration, but we're always going to let the law drive this stuff and the facts of the case and not political motivations, which frankly makes us so much different from the Biden administration, where they indicted not just the President of the United States, but so many people who were just engaged in the basic job of politics, who were engaged in policymaking, who disagreed with the Biden administration, and because that they faced prosecution from that same administration. If you look at the Comey indictment, Martha, this was a grand jury indictment delivered in Alexandria, Virginia, not exactly a hotbed of Donald Trump's political support. There were three requested indictments. The grand jury returned 2 of those 3 indictments. So I think they showed they were judicious. I think that it showed clearly that there were a couple of things that James Comey did wrong. And to the people who are saying that this is all political, I mean, look, if you look at our track record in the Trump administration, there have been people who have been prosecuted, who have been political allies, who agree with our politics. There have been people who disagree with our politics. We're not letting politics drive this. We're letting the requirements of the justice system and the law drive this. And unfortunately for James Comey, when I look at this indictment, I see a guy who lied under oath, and he'll have his day in court. He'll have his opportunity to prove the other case in front of the jury. But the idea that this is driven by politics, I think is preposterous when you actually read the details of the indictment and the obvious fact that James Comey did lie under oath to Congress multiple times.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it technically, yeah, sure, J.D. Vance is right here, but tit for tat is, I guess, I just want an acknowledgement of what they put President Trump through is unprecedented. It was absolutely unprecedented. And you had the Rhino faction in the GOP that were wanting him to go to jail because they wanted to run. You had and they were saying this is unprecedented. We've never had somebody under indictment that's going to get the nomination. He can't get the nomination. Do you remember all that? What these people did, and this is the thing. We were talking about this. By the way, if you missed the interview that we did on my show, the afternoon show, the Paul Harrell program, with Congressman Rick Crawford, who's the House Intel Chair of the Select Permanent Committee on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. I brought up Al Capone. I brought up, look, you look at these guys, you look what they've done, detailing Adam Schiff, taking classified information right out of the pressing, going up to a press gaggle, divulging it, and coming back, and the House Republicans witnessing all this in real time. Not to mention his lies. And you think, well, how do you get somebody like that? Well, they may get Adam Schiff on mortgage fraud. I think from an Al Capone situation, these people are treasonous criminals, and if you can't get them on treason, okay, that's fine. Can you get them on tax evasion? That's where I'm at with it at this point, because I do look at these people. These intel oligarchs and these criminal, I look at them as not only enemies of the American people, but they're people that directly make our neighbors' lives, our families' lives less prosperous because they are so corrupt. And I also know that if nothing happens to these people when the Democrats get back in power, it is going to be so bad on normal, average Americans, particularly Christians. They will have if the system is so corrupt that when we take it over, the system can't actually produce indictments and convictions for people that have obviously committed crimes. First of all, I think at that point, we're just not even a free country anymore. And that'll be obvious. But if that doesn't happen, then I think you're going to see that they will have no incentive. If their own system does in fact protect them, they will have no incentive to not do what they did to us, but just go full mask off. And don't even pretend. Don't even pretend it's neutral. Just come out and say it. You know, biblical Christianity is offensive, therefore biblical Christianity is illegal. I think, though, they will go full-blown communist if we pull our punches here. If we don't actually get convictions and show the world, show for the record, what was done in this country and how the intel services were effectively turned against the American people because they didn't like who we voted for. Speak of another one. Here's John Brennan.
You know, I don't see any case against me. I have looked back on all of my actions and decisions, and with John Durham, the special counsel, and others that have looked at what we did, it was certainly consistent with our legal authorities and with the law. So I don't know what, they're referring to there. Individuals who used to work in the government, even if their security clearances were revoked, they could be subpoenaed. They could be, called to provide testimony in support of whatever allegations they have. I don't see a case there.
There you go. John Brennan says there's no case against him. Okay, moving on. Good to know. There's no case against John Brennan, everybody. Yeah, I want to remind everybody this portion of the program brought to you by Red Vive Health. Give them a call, 844-RED-VIVE. Mention my name, Paul. Save 35%. We'll tell you more about the life-enhancing power of red light technology here in just a minute. Then you got Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer. They had a big falling out, but he even went on MSNBC. He thinks Comey did it. And the MSNBC panel here was shocked. This was quite amusing to me.
Do any of us actually really know whether or not Comey is or is not guilty of the charges? I know that they parade out all of these pundits. They have the great titles in the Chiron, former prosecutor, yada, yada, former FBI. Who's seen a single document that's in the possession right now of the DOJ? The answer is nobody. Who has the crystal ball? Still nobody. I will tell you from my investigation, which I used Brian Karem, who's a 30-year White House correspondent, to speak to people inside government because they wouldn't talk to me. I've learned that Comey was actually very much involved in the Russia investigation in a very negative way. And chances are this DOJ has every single email, every text message, every communication. I believe likely he will be found guilty.
Oh, well, that's interesting because
I think he likely committed a crime.
Wait, what? What specifically?
I believe likely he committed a crime. I don't know what that crime is, but there are hundreds of thousands of documents, and government has each and every one of them. All they need to find is that one.
Did you hear that one lady in there? What? I think he did it. I think he committed a crime. What? It's just funny to me. It's funny when somebody, goes off the reservation. And you're not supposed to say that on MSNBC or MS Now or whatever it is they're going to be rebranding here in the future. All right, so moving on. This is the news. FBI Director Kash Patel, he addresses a report that 274 plainclothes agents were at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. This was from a report here over at Just the News. John Solomon, Steve Richards. Headline, FBI bombshell, 274 agents sent to Capitol for J6. Many later complained they were political pawns. Hidden for 4 years, an after-action report on FBI's involvement in J6 riot found by Director Patel shows dozens of agents feared that the FBI had become woke and liberally biased. The FBI secretly deployed more than 250 plainclothes agents to the U.S. Capitol during the J6 2021 riot. An operation so disorganized, according to this, it unleashed searing frustrations among many of the FBI's rank and file that the Bureau had lost its core competencies to wokeness and allowed its employees to become pawns in a political war, according to an after-action report kept from the public for more than 4 years. So the thing is here, I think we're still not getting the full story, right? And actually, I think the beginning of this report talking about how unorganized it was. Well, I mean, I can imagine if you've got 274 plainclothes agents According to this, there's no way that they were able to identify themselves and that sort of thing. But that also leaves the door open for a very focused effort among not the full 274, but a very organized effort out of a smaller number of that larger number. You see where I'm going with this. You know, people like Ray Epps or others. But it is interesting that we finally have an official number, at least an official number from the government, if you will. This is what Kash Patel said about this. The FBI director says agents were sent into a crowd control mission after the riot was declared by Metro Police, something that goes against FBI standards. This was the failure of a corrupt leadership that lied to Congress and to the American people about what really happened, says Kash Patel. Now, so I don't really know why he feels the need to say, hey, they were in there after it was declared a riot. That's convenient. But again, that does not, the left is going to try to say, well, this debunks the fact that there was, and of course, we're not even talking about other federal agencies. We're only talking about the FBI. But again, if you've got 274 plainclothes agents at January 6th, the opportunity for corruption, the opportunity for entrapment, the opportunity to start something and to whip the crowd up into a frenzy is real. And really, all this really does is further the conspiracy. I mean, aside from the guided tours of the Capitol that day where police officers are welcoming in the protesters, police officers are removing barricades and all that other stuff, and really just so many other anomalies from that. And people, out there trying to put together actual timelines. We still haven't heard about the DNC and the RNC pipe bomb. That's just up in the wind. Who planted that? Why did we never find out who planted the pipe bomb? The footage that we have that is out there leaves you with way more questions than answers, but it doesn't really seem like the police are too worried about it when they find out about it. It's almost as if they, expected it. So, this goes back to the whole thing. If they are able to operate like this, it's so blatant. Maybe this is the good thing about cameras, and maybe this is why, cameras on every corner. Maybe this is one of the good things about it, because eventually it comes out. The same thing right now is happening with the Charlie Kirk assassination, where people are demanding to see footage of this guy actually holding the rifle. People are doubting the narrative. I mean, we are literally in a real-time JFK situation right now, or at least that's what it feels like. And people aren't going to, look, if the and I'll just say this about the Charlie Kirk thing, because I've seen all the theories. I've seen everything from a muzzle flash to the right. I've seen people, I saw the PBD podcast talk about an entrance wound here and maybe blood splatter. We've seen, people talk about exploding microphones. People have talked about drones, which the drones that were there circling around, and some of them moving really fast, some really small drones. I've seen stuff. I just want answers. I wanted to explain. One of these little guys was allegedly traveling 150 miles an hour. Now, you explain that to me. Again, these are all allegations, and the zone is so flooded right now, it's very difficult for me to keep track of, when it comes to the Charlie Kirk assassination, exactly what we're being told. But I know one thing. There's cameras everywhere. There's a lot of footage that we still don't have. I know that much. Just like J6. All that footage, they would not let us see. And even when they gave Tucker Carlson access, we still didn't get it all. We got enough to make the report interesting, where we saw, what was it, Buffalo guy getting a guided tour of the White House and let into the Senate? What is going on here? Okay, so that's the thing about J6, and now we know there were 274 plainclothes agents, and then they filed a complaint because they thought they were being used as political pawns. Not all 274. You know what? That'd be my first question. The agents who were there that did not file a complaint about being used as political pawns, I want to talk to those people. I want to talk to the ones that thought, oh yeah, no, we weren't political pawns. We're doing our job. The opportunity for corruption is immense. And again, they wanted to squash populism, and they wanted to make sure that Donald Trump could never run for office again, which is exactly what James Comey said on January 20th, 2021. They got to lock Donald Trump up so he can never run for president again, bar him from running for office ever again. So, what is Kash Patel doing here? Well, at a bare minimum, he has exposed Christopher Wray as a liar. Here's Christopher Wray in 2023.
Focusing on those who were there in an undercover capacity on January 6th, how many were there?
Again, I'm not sure that I can give you that number as I sit here. I'm not sure there were undercover agents on scene.
I find that kind of a remarkable statement, Director. At this point, you don't know whether there were undercover federal agents, FBI agents in the crowd or in the Capitol on January 6th.
I say that because I want to be very careful. There have been a number of court filings related to some of these topics, and I want to make sure that I stick within what's in.
I understand that, but I thought I heard you say you didn't know whether there were FBI agents or informants or human sources in the Capitol or in the vicinity on January 6th. Did I misunderstand you? I thought that's what you said.
Well, I referred very specifically to undercover agents.
Yeah. And so are you acknowledging then there were undercover agents?
As I sit here right now, I do not believe there were undercover agents on scene.
Any
assets? FBI agents.
Did you have any assets present that day? In the crowd?
When it comes to what you're calling assets or what we would call confidential human sources, that's a place where, again, I want to be careful, much as I said in response to an earlier question. There are court filings that I think speak to this that I'm happy to make sure we get to you, assuming they're not under seal. And that can better answer the question than I can as I sit here right now.
Okay, so there you go. Yeah, there might have been confidential human sources, but there were no FBI agents. Now, did he know about that report? Did Chris Wray just perjure himself there? Emily over on X writes, if the 274 FBI agents were truly there for crowd control, as Kash Patel said, then why would former FBI Director Christopher Wray feel the need to lie about it? And now you're lying to us. The answer is unacceptable, and you know it, meaning she doesn't like Kash Patel's explanation, and neither do I. I think it's gaslighting of the highest form when we have been saying that the FBI or other intel agents essentially created the environment. You could call it the Republican version of the Reichstag fire or the uniparty version of the Reichstag fire. Because they didn't want Donald Trump to ever get a chance at the office again. I mean, you think about it, how ridiculous they were, how sensationalized they were after J6, saying that it was worse than 9/11. I mean, come on, right? By the way, it's also a really stark contrast as to how the left handles their disagreements versus how the right handles ours. The people on the left just will start to burn their cities down and loot businesses. People on the right get mad enough, they go to D.C. in an attempt to redress the government with their grievances, their long trains of abuses and usurpations. Okay? Big difference there. And, of course, what did the government do? Well, and this highlights the inadequacies of the current Trump administration, because Christopher Wray's FBI, they were arresting people almost immediately. They were arresting people for J6 almost immediately. And we saw what happened. And they had to invent a statute. They had to change the statute. They charged these people with the interfering of an official proceeding, which was an Enron statute. They created that after the Enron statute, when the Enron executives for white-collar crime were destroying documents. So they created a law so that no one ever could do that again. And they said, you're interfering with an official proceeding of not the FBI, but of the Securities and Exchange Commission, of the SEC. That's what that provision was written for. And then they turn around and use that to charge all of these J6ers. Thankfully, the Supreme Court said you can't do that. You can't do that. But it wasn't after all these people were thrown into gulags and essentially solitary confinement and treated like garbage for 4 years. And by the way, that's why Trump pardoning all of them makes sense, although there's still people that need to be pardoned. So, yeah, I mean, again, all of this is really, when you look at the indictment of James Comey and you look at the club, there is a lot of work to do. There is so much work to do. Mike Benz writes, They hid 250 plus FBI plainclothes agents in the crowd on January 6th from us for over 4 years. They ducked and dodged the question at every hearing, hoping we would never find out the incredible answer we just got today. Senator Mike Lee, Christopher Wray concealed this from us for 4 years. This is a big deal and exactly why he hid it from us. And Donald Trump truthing on Truth Social, wow, a radical left Democrat scam. Meaning, and Elon Musk taking notice, meaning it was a radical left Democrat scam. That is what the president is now saying about January 6th. So tell me what you think. Sound off in the comments as we broadcast here on X America News or my Facebook page or Rumble, X America's Rumble channel. Let me know. What do you think about all of this? By the way, our thoughts and our prayers are with I didn't even mention this yet. We're going to talk about this later in the day with Rob. I just wanted to get more facts about it, but we've got this terrible Michigan Mormon church shooting, and we'll talk more about the suspect. And it's really interesting how the suspect in here, it's if you go look at the photos, I've seen the online back and forth. You go look at the photos of the guy's political sign, his Trump Vance sign. It's enough ammunition for the left to say, oh, this guy was a left or was a far right winger because he's a veteran and had American flags on his car. But then there's just enough room because there's a big stop sign right underneath it, like a traffic sign, a stop sign right underneath it, and so that gives enough people on the right to say, no, he was anti-Trump. He was saying stop Trump and Vance or Trump Vance stop. And I just think, man, you know how convenient this all is. It just keeps everybody in their exact same camps. It's just like really frustrating. That none of that back and forth is what we should be focused on right now, though. Honestly, because I think it's unclear. Although we'll probably know a lot more about his mental health this afternoon. But this is the fact of the tragedy of the people that have lost their lives and the people that died in the fire because he burnt the Mormon church down. So. It's awful, and it's just yet again people woke up to another essentially terrorist act that we keep waking up to, whether it's what happened in Minnesota at the Catholic Church or what happened yesterday or what happened to Charlie Kirk or what happened at the military base over on the East Coast. It's becoming a constant thing. It almost feels like it's going to be a daily thing, and if stuff like that becomes a daily thing, is America actually in a civil war? This is what Tim Pool talks about, not a civil war where the grays and the blues line up on a field, not that kind of. Would a modern day civil war look like an event that happened yesterday? If that happened is that what a modern civil war actually looks like? I don't know. Something to think about. All right, now we're going to come to my favorite segment of the program. Let me see if I can't find this here. Oh, yes. I'm already against women clergy. You don't have to convince me.
And let us confess our faith today in the words of the Sparkle Creed. I believe in the non-binary God.
And now it's time for I'm already against women clergy. You don't have to convince me.
All right, so for this edition, we haven't had one of these in a while. I'm already against women clergy. You don't have to convince me. We go to Dublin, Ireland, at the Christ Church Cathedral. Bishop Bonnie Perry is a partnered lesbian, and this is what she thinks about sin.
I knew I was a lesbian when I was 8 years old. Friends, if it was good enough for Jesus and his apostles, it's good enough for us. For decades, society and the church, the institutional church, has told us that we are not good enough, that our lives...
No. The church has said that your lifestyle is a sinful one and needs to be repented of and is not acceptable. It's not an acceptable way to live, right? The church also has said to all of us that we're not good enough because we're all sinners, not just the sin of homosexuality, but all of the other ones. Lust in general, covetousness, lying, not honoring the Lord your God. worshiping false gods, not honoring the Sabbath, taking his name in vain, killing, adultery, I mentioned that, stealing, bearing false witness, coveting, all of that. The church says you're not good enough because all have sinned, and your only hope is to repent and turn to Christ. Your only hope is to trust Christ and Christ alone for your salvation, because he paid it. He paid it for you. And that's what the church says. This is some sect of people that don't like this particular, they don't like being told that they're sinners. This lady bishop doesn't like to be told that her lesbianism is a sin. So she's going to criticize the church broadly by saying we've always been told that we're not good enough.
Are wrong, and our love is less than. For centuries, the church has said that who we are, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, non-binary, and the categories keep evolving, much like the universe. For decades, the structures of power have said no.
First of all, the universe is not evolving. It's actually getting weaker. Okay, that's why people are obsessed with transhumanism, because they want to extend the lives of men. Genetic entropy is a real thing. Copies of copies of copies of copies. You've seen the movie Multiplicity, right? Right, Steve? Copies of copies of copies of copies. This is the sin. Sin enters the world and things start to die. And now here we are. This is why, I don't want to get into Neanderthals, but I'm fascinated with Neanderthals that used stone tools and buried their dead. And I think maybe they were just biblical humans. But that's a topic for another. And, I'd love to get L.A. Marzulli back on, so we could talk about that specific issue. I wonder if we should do that. I got to interview L.A. Marzulli, the author of On the Trail of the Nephilim, which I have volume 1. He's got several other books, but the books are fascinating, and you should check them out. The archaeological evidence and everything else. But I digress. Genetic entropy is real. The universe isn't constantly evolving. It's funny how, a Darwinist, string theory, the universe is expanding, and, it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger instead of in a closed system or a finite system. It's funny how believing what she believes also builds into her woke sex theology, which is, we're evolving, and so that's why, it's not just gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, and it's all this other stuff too, because this is the way the world is, because the universe is expanding and it's infinite. Isn't it funny how she's going to use modern science? By the way, they came up with string theory, right? Like they came up with it because the math just simply doesn't work out. A tornado going through a junkyard does not leave behind a 747, right? And the only way to explain that is either with a God who's real and created everything, or, if there's multiple dimensions and an infinite amount of multiple dimensions, then you have an infinite amount of probabilities, and then everything is possible. All things are possible, and so we're just in that one universe that a tornado ripped through here and left behind a fully functioning 747, or much less a human heart that pumps and pumps and pumps and pumps. So anyway, back to her.
To us. And they have said, stop speaking. Be silent. Don't tell us. Do not speak your truth. But I say to you what you know. I say to you what you have heard from this pulpit before. I say to you, as a beloved child of God, as someone who is made in God's image and likeness, as a bishop in the Christian church, as an out, proud, partnered lesbian, I say to you, speak your truth.
Speak your truth. Speak your truth, not the truth. You say your truth, then it's just, do what thou willst. Skeletor, of all people, He-Man, Skeletor on X writes, 1 John 1, verse 8, English Standard Version. If we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. So again, her whole premise is the church calls my lifestyle sinful. I disagree. It's not. The Bible It doesn't say that. I want to define my own reality. I want to speak my truth. And so effectively, that's what this lady pastor is saying. She's effectively saying, I am not a sinner in the way that the Bible describes. Anyway, we hadn't had one of these segments in a while.
This has been I'm Already Against Women Clergy. You don't have to convince me.
All right, folks, let's go on over to this news. And it was tragic news for people in the Christian community. Remembering Vodi Bakum. This happened on Thursday evening, and I didn't do a show on Friday, so I didn't get a chance to address it, but I want to address it now. Founders Seminary writing that we're saddened to inform friends that our dear brother Vodi Bakum Jr. has left the land of the dying and entered the land of the living. Earlier today, after suffering an emergency medical incident, he entered into his rest and the immediate presence of the Savior, whom he loved, trusted, and served since he was converted as a college student. Please pray for Bridget, their children, and grandchildren. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. Psalm 116, verse 15. So I thought it was appropriate to take this opportunity to go back and talk in light of what we just heard in that previous segment of a lady pastor not understanding what the word says. There were very few. There's just very few people with that, with the public persona that, I guess what I would say is Vodi Bakum's gospel presentations were so full of passion and so grounded in Scripture and so grounded in the truth. I'll give you an example of Vodi Bakum, ladies and gentlemen, the late, great Vodi Bakum, preaching the gospel.
Our problem is this, our problem is that. We say, no. Our problem is that God created the world. And God created man, and he put man in the garden to keep the garden. And he gave the man a command. And he held that man to perfect, perpetual obedience to that command. And he promised him life if he kept it, and death if he didn't. And he didn't keep it. He ate. And because he ate, because of that one man, sin entered the world, and death through sin. And everyone born from that man through ordinary generation inherited that man's sin nature. And because of that sin nature, sins proceed from it. And our world is broken because of that sin. And we stand guilty before a holy and righteous God. And we know that he's holy, and we know that he's righteous, and we crave justice. But the problem is that if God gives us justice, we all die. And so that God, in his goodness and in his mercy, sent forth his son, who was not born of ordinary generation, but was born of a virgin. Yes, the virgin birth matters. Why? Because if he's born of ordinary generation, he's born in sin. But because he's not born of ordinary generation, he's not born in sin. He's clean of sin. His record is clean. And he keeps his record clean. And he obeys God's law. And because he's fully God and fully man, he obeys the law of God on our behalf in his active obedience. And then in his passive obedience, God made him who knew no sin to be sin for us. All we like sheep had gone astray. Each of us had turned to his own way, but God laid upon him the iniquity of us all. And Christ died for sin once for all, the just for the unjust. And God imputes our sinfulness to him. And he nails our sinfulness to the tree. And Christ dies and raises again on the third day for our justification. And there's another imputation. The righteousness of Christ is actually imputed to us so that God can be both just and the justifier of the one who places faith in Jesus Christ. So that all those who come to Christ may enter in. So that all those who place faith in Christ might be saved, but not only saved, but sanctified. Because he's the firstborn of many brethren. We're justified and we're adopted into the family of God. And we're sanctified. And as his children, we begin to bear the family resemblance. And we're further sanctified throughout this life. by the very same gospel that saves us, until one day when it's all said and done, we're not just saved from the penalty of sin. We're not just saved from the power of sin, but one day we're glorified and saved from the very presence of sin. That's the gospel that we preach. That's the gospel that we need. And that's the gospel that's more than enough.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, obviously it was Voddie's time because he's no longer here. And God is in control of all things. But it does hurt because this year, after obviously the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the loss of Voddie, and then a couple of months ago, the departure of John MacArthur, it's just been a tough year when it comes to that. At least it's tough. It's perceived as a tough year. And what is the Lord doing in the midst of that? Well, I think he's involved, and he's calling people to himself, and evil has gotten so pronounced and obvious, it's causing people to realize they don't want it. And it's causing people, if evil is real and objective truth is real, and we can say this is objectively evil, I don't want anything to do with it, well, then there's objective truth and there's objective good. What is good? Jesus Christ. He is good. God is good. This is what's going on right now. And it's an exciting time to be alive. More from Voddie. Megan Basham writing, I really can't believe the news about Voddie is real. Oh, Lord, give us 1,000 men like him. Give us men influenced by his legacy by speaking unpopular truth and discerning unbiblical trends.
All I have is God wrapped himself in flesh, died on a cross, nailed my sin thereto, was placed in the grave, rose again on the third day, ascended to the right hand of the Father, and is there making intercession for me until such time as my salvation is completed and he takes me home. That's all I got. All I have is God.
And then finally, this afternoon, we have, I think this is the most fitting clip that was making the rounds of the internet, specifically concerning his death. Voddie talked about his death.
You are going to hear a rumor one day that Voddie Baucham is no more. Don't you believe it? Don't you believe it? Don't you believe it? Because though I die, I will rise with Christ. It will not be the end of me, because Christ is raised, and I too will be raised with Christ. That is why he is called the firstborn from the dead. Folks, you don't talk about a firstborn unless there's others who are born after him. Don't you pity me. You pity the one who wants to hold on to Jesus without holding on to the resurrection. You pity the one who has absolutely no hope because they have no resurrected Christ. You are going to hear a rumor one day.
So the rumors are not true. Voddie Baucham is actually alive in the presence of Jesus Christ right now. And that is an encouraging thought. And knowing that we're not, that God is not on our side necessarily. We are on God's side, and God is going to subdue all of his enemies, including ours, because his enemies are our enemies. And knowing that people need to hear the gospel, they need to hear the truth, they need to hear that they are sinners, but there is grace, and they need to hear it. Knowing all of that, and knowing that for a Christian to die is to gain, that should make us offensive players, not defensive players, offensive players, willing to speak the truth, and obviously in love, but looking at the situation. There's no hill we cannot attempt to take, because if we don't take it and we fail, we're with Christ. And if we do take it, more people know who Christ is. More people come to him in faith and the supernatural transformation of what the gospel is. And that's very apropos, considering we also just witnessed Charlie Kirk telling people not only about the gospel, but telling people how do we live in light of the fact that the gospel is the ultimate truth that literally supports and undergirds our very reality, our very existence. And he was killed for that. So there will be more martyrs. And things go on. We're going to be talking about how violent our country is getting coming up here in 3 hours on my show, the Paul Harrell Program, with my co-host Rob Spencer. The National Guard is being sent to Portland, and also videos about Chicago. We have people, have got this candidate, this former Army guy in Illinois. He's now, I think, a fire captain running for office in Illinois, telling the National Guard to disobey their orders, making social media posts about it. I don't think that's going to work out too well for that guy. We have the terrible shooting that took place at the Mormon church yesterday. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that guy, what all of this means. But doing it not in a black pill way. Because through all of this, there's a reason for it, even though we may not understand this, that, or the other right now. But what we do is we hold fast to the truth. That is all the time that I have for this edition. I want to remind everybody to go to redvivehealth.org/Paul if you want healing red light panels, clinical strength in your house. They have a 60-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it out, and if you don't like it, you can send it back. Nobody ever does, because it's incredible technology. Very powerful red light technology, near red and near infrared. There's also 0% interest financing available at redvivehealth.org/Paul. Or you can call 844-RED-VIVE and mention my name, Paul, and you'll save 35% off of these red light panels. Go check them out now. redvivehealth.org/Paul. Save 35%. That's all the time that I have. I'll see you in 3 hours on Ex American News, on Facebook, and on Rumble. 3 hours from now, Paul Harrell Program will begin. God bless.
The very foundation of the Christian faith is based